Welcome to another best free hit team video ahead of Double Gameweek 36. Normally there's a bit of a template going on with these videos where players like Salah, Trent are in it, and yes, they may indeed be in this video again, but there's going to be some different picks here as well, and with the amount of teams doubling in 36, it kind of opens up the possibilities of differentials and going about things a bit differently and not just necessarily going for the same old stuff. So let's get straight into this and let me know what you would change and who your captain would be. In goal, I would go for Kasper Schmeichel, but a few others I would consider include Jordan Pickford, who produced a man-of-the-match display against Chelsea. And on a bench boost, for example, if you could afford both Schmeichel and Pickford, I think you've probably got the best goalkeeper pairing in Double Gameweek 36. Another one that is also very good for a Double Gameweek 36 pairing is Foster. And I've seen a lot of you in the streams talk about going for Foster as your main goalkeeper, and that gives you more money to just have as many premium defenders, midfielders, maybe even forwards as possible, although that would mainly be for the defenders and midfielders. I still think Schmeichel is the best in terms of the fixtures. I don't trust Leicester defensively, and they just rotate too much, so that does put me off. But Kasper Schmeichel will play every single game, and he can get some save points as well as bonus. And the likes of Ramsdale have fallen off very much. He produced a great save against West Ham yesterday, but still, I would be quite put off Arsenal defence. They haven't kept a clean sheet in the last 6 games. He's still not a bad option, and they could keep a clean sheet against Leeds. But ultimately, Schmeichel, Pickford are probably the 2 best goalkeepers. Another one that you could include, of course, is Ederson, and ultimately, he's probably the best. But would you want to spend a City spot on him? I mean, it's not the worst thing in the world, and he's still a really good goalkeeper. He's going to get clean sheets, but I would rather go for the defenders. Of course, a few other midfielders and stuff. I don't want to spoil the names just yet, but I think you can imagine the names I'm going to put out there. But ultimately, I would go for Schmeichel or Pickford. We're going really big in defence on the best 2 teams in the land, Manchester City and Liverpool. I would go for Joao Cancelo and Laporte, as well as Trent and Matip. Now, Robertson's still a fantastic choice, and for me, he's the best defender right now, but there are a few doubts whether he will start against Villarreal in matchday 12 in UCL Fantasy, as well as both games in Double Gameweek 36. I wouldn't be surprised if Tsimikas gets a game. So if Robertson starts on Tuesday, and we'll talk about this, and we're going to react to it live in the deadline stream for UCL Fantasy on Tuesday, then that would have repercussions, I think, on Double Gameweek 36. Now, I could be wrong. Robertson has a tremendous engine on him, and he's so reliable for Liverpool, but I just think Tsimikas is a good understudy. He's very reliable, and he could do a good job when needed. So it wouldn't be out of the realms of possibility if Tsimikas did get a game in 36. Therefore, Matip and Trent would probably be the best duo in this game week, as well as having Cancelo and Laporte. You could argue I'm putting too many eggs in one basket, or in this case 2 baskets, but I think these are the 2 best teams, and I can see at least 1 clean sheet for both clubs, as well as some attacking returns potentially, especially for Trent and Joao Cancelo. As for the 5th defender, I've gone for Johnson, who's facing Norwich away. He's actually a decent option to come off the bench if needed, but ultimately, on a free hit, and the same goes for having Steele here as my second goalkeeper, you don't need to go really big on your bench, because ultimately having 1 or 2 decent options on the bench is more than enough, and you want to invest pretty much all of the money into your starting 11. Otherwise, there's not really much point, and you're kind of limiting yourself with the free hit. So I would go for these 4 defenders, as well as Johnson as your backup sitting on your bench. We've gone for another cheap yet reliable 5th midfielder here in Gordon. So having Gordon and Johnson on your bench is already more than enough, in my opinion, on a free hit, and it really helps you out. Now, if you're on a bench boost, for example, Gordon's also a really good facilitator and enabler for that. But as for Johnson, you could maybe go for someone else a bit more expensive. You could go for Sessegnon from Spurs, maybe Tomiyasu if he's fit, Ben White if he returns from injury, and a few others like Emerson Royal if you want someone quite cheap who has a double game week. But ultimately, I think Gordon's good for both a bench boost and also a free hit, as well as your normal team. He's a great enabler, and he's in good form, and in my opinion, he has better fixtures than the likes of Jacob Ramsey at Aston Villa and also Dewsbury Hall, who, to be honest, yes, he might have the better fixtures, but do I expect him to start both games? I'm just not too sure. I would expect him to start in the Conference League, and therefore he could get a rest in one of the Double Gameweek 36 fixtures. As for the 4 midfielders, though, I think this is almost as strong as you can get in Double Gameweek 36. Heung-min Son, 19 points in 35. He was my captain, and he's just so consistent, especially at home. I would back him to get some returns across both games. Yes, Spurs have a very difficult double. Would I go for triple Spurs attack in 36? Definitely not. But having 1 is definitely enough, and I think it's a good option. And I would go for Heung-min Son. He's just in the form of his life, arguably. And Salah is Salah. Yes, I've seen some people go for Sadio Mane, maybe go to Jota or Diaz, and then invest that extra money into other positions across their team. That is definitely something to debate and possibly consider. But ultimately, I would still go for Salah. For me, he's in the top 2 captaincy options this week alongside Kevin De Bruyne. A lot of people will be put off Kevin De Bruyne, and I think that is a very big advantage for you. I personally expect the Belgian to start both games in 36 and that game against Real Madrid. And a lot of people will think, well, he just got benched against Leeds. What if it happens again? Now, the concern I would have with De Bruyne is that if City are 2 goals up, I would expect him to come off quite early because they've already kind of killed off the game and they don't need to exert him even more. However, I would still go for Kevin De Bruyne. I would expect him to start both games, and I'd even captain him possibly. I'll talk about this more when we go to FPL.team and show you how this would line up so you can get a good visualization of this. And as for Bukayo Saka, it's between him and Kulusevski, you could argue, around 6.7 million and under, but ultimately I would go for Bukayo Saka. He's on penalties, he's looking sharp, he almost scored as well against West Ham, got the assist, he's on set pieces. I just think there's too much to like about Bukayo Saka, and I would go for at least one Arsenal attacker. So if you don't go for Saka, you could possibly consider Nketiah. We'll talk about the forward line very soon, but ultimately, let me know who you would captain between De Bruyne, Salah, or maybe even Son if you want to go there. And I think another really good and underrated option for Gameweek 36 for the captaincy is Joao Cancelo. This is a very different forward line than you would be accustomed to, maybe in other videos as well as my own, the free hits, the wildcards, normal transfer tips, team selection, etc. We've gone for Richarlison, Nketiah and Greenwood as the substitute. Now, how would you order the bench? We'll talk about that very soon in the FPL.team section, but I've gone for Nketiah because he scored 2 goals against Chelsea, had a good game against United, was quite unlucky not to score. Should have scored himself. Obviously, he had a very good chance that he squandered, really, but also had that goal disallowed. Then against West Ham, he had 4 shots, which is as many as Lacazette has had in the last 9 games, basically, in the Premier League. But Nketiah looked so sharp. He was dragging West Ham to places they didn't want to be. He was stretching their defence very well. His positioning was great. His runs, his intensity, and some decent finishes that were quite unlucky, not to go in. And one that was just off target. I mean, literally, we're talking about centimetres here of a difference, and people would all be clamouring for Nketiah. Now, there is Dennis, there's Pukki, there's a few other strikers like Watkins that you could consider over Nketiah and Richarlison. And speaking of the Brazilian, he came off injured, so keep an eye on that. And the FA are also investigating a situation where Richarlison threw a flare back into the crowd. I don't think anything will come of that, but you never know. So once again, if Richarlison's injured or suspended, you could go for Pukki, Dennis, or a few others like Watkins, etc. But ultimately, would I spend over 12 million on Harry Kane? Probably not. I think Son is a really good substitute for him at 11 million. He's in better form. He gets more points for scoring a goal. He gets the clean sheet point if indeed Spurs get a clean sheet. And Son's in better form, especially at home. So ultimately, I would just go for the South Korean over Harry Kane. And ultimately, I would go for a team like this. Now let me show you in FPL.team how things would line up, the captaincy. And also you can let me know if there's anything you would change with this team. I'd very much appreciate it. As you can see, this is a very Manchester City and Liverpool centric team. We've gone for Schmeichel in goal, and once again you could go for Pickford as well, or maybe even Edison if you want to go about things differently, but I would go for Schmeichel, Matip, Trent, Cancelo and Laporte as the backline. I think that's very solid. Yes, there's Marcos Alonso, who's still a great option, Reece James too, but I just don't trust Chelsea at the moment, and whilst they could be, under jeopardy, their top 4 position, I still will expect them to kind of wrap things up, and they might not have as much to play for still. I just don't think the motivation is there. A lot of players are leaving in the summer, and things seem disjointed. Now, that's not to say that the likes of Mason Mount, Reece James, Marcos Alonso, etc. can't haul, but I would back Manchester City and Liverpool much more, especially in the case of the defenders. Bukayo Saka, Salah, Son and De Bruyne, I think that's a really strong midfield, and ultimately you could captain any single one of them. I would go for either De Bruyne or Salah, keep things simple, and honestly, I would back De Bruyne to start both games. I prefer his fixtures over Salah, and I would go for the Belgian as my captain, and then Richarlison and Nketiah up front. I think this is a very strong team. Obviously, you may disagree, and obviously I encourage any constructive feedback. Let's get this video to 150 likes, and also let's get to 11,000 subscribers. It'd be very much appreciated. The bench is also pretty decent. Yeah, forget about Steele. He's pretty much bench fodder. But Gordon, Johnson and Greenwood, who has a double as well, that's a decent enough bench. So let's say, for example, someone misses out completely, which would be quite rare and quite unlikely, but you never know. That's a pretty decent bench to kind of compensate for things. So I think it's a very strong team for the free hit. As for the bench boost, of course, things would be different. Let me know down in the comment section below if you want to see a best bench boost team, which we kind of covered in the last video for the wildcard in Gameweek 35, but not fully. And there would be maybe a few changes I would make from that team, especially after what we just seen over the weekend. But thank you very much for watching. If you you enjoyed this video or found it useful, smash the like button and subscribe for new. Are you free hitting this week? And also, what chips are you playing? Do you have the wildcard left? Do you have the bench boost? Anything else? I've only got one free hit left, and personally, I'm looking to use it in Game Week 37. However, looking at this team and how strong it is, I would be slightly tempted to maybe change my mind and playing 36. So I'll definitely think over it across the weekend and across the week, should we say. But that should be very interesting. Be sure to smash the like button, subscribe if you're new, and let's get this video to those targets. Like I said before, thank you very much for all the support that you've already shown. It's much appreciated. All the super chats, all the channel members and patrons, you all much appreciated as always. Thank you very much. Good luck with Game Week 35. There's still one more game left. Man United against Brentford, and also the rest of Double Game Week 36. That should be very, very good. There could be some huge swings there, especially because it's the biggest Double Game Week of the season. Hopefully it's enjoyable and we get the green arrows we want. So all the best of luck with that. Enjoy it as always. Take care. Good luck with UCL Fantasy as well. Match day 12. I'll see you in the deadline stream there, and I'll see you next time.